So, hi everyone. Welcome to this roundup call, June's roundup call. We are very happy to have you here, and we hope we'll have an interactive session. So, we have an agenda here. So, we shall be discussing about dynamic form content. So, Elijah will be taking us through that. And then we'll have a care teams update from Michael and hopefully a demo. And then we'll have token login improvements for Android versions. And then we'll also have CHT core release updates. So welcome to this call, and we hope you ask as many questions as possible. So I'll invite Elijah as I also ask Buso to move to the next slide.
Thank you, Maria Chana, and welcome all to the CHT Roundup call. My name is Elijah, and I'm an app developer at Medic. So in the course of deploying workflows based on the CHT, most of us here have worked quite extensively with XForms. And I'm not really sure if we have ever taken the time to consider what happens under the hood. So today, before we get to the part of supporting dynamic content, it would be great to understand how XForms work under the hood, and then we can hopefully make people understand how they can support not just the traditional widgets that come out of the box, but you can extend your forms to have more flexible UI features. So XForms typically have two components, and that is the model and the user interface. The model has instance bindings and data storage mechanism that contains, first of all, the form elements. So those are the questions of the forms, the options, all that metadata. And then once the form has been submitted, the data within it will be stored somewhere. So for the user interface, we have the standard set of visual controls. So you have the different kinds of inputs that are supported, traditional input box, for example, date input, the calendar selector, etc., etc. And then once the form has been rendered and has been filled out and submitted, now that data is sent to an XForm data processor. Next slide, Buso. So before we get to this demo, here we were working with a use case of displaying financial data using the XForm standard. So this is not supported out of the box. And I will walk us through the process of getting this display to be, to be shown this way. So I will share my screen. First of all, to walk through the XML component, and then we can get to see how that works on the CHT. So let's take a minute to walk through the form XML, and then we can see how to integrate this kind of dynamic content. It can be anything, anything that can be displayed by a web page, you can have it within the form. So going back to the components that we discussed earlier, this is what a typical form XML looks like. So you have, first of all, the outermost XML tags, declaring it as HTML, and then you have the head part, and then the body. So within the head, we have the model definition, and as we mentioned earlier, this section has the instance tags and also the bindings. So bindings are typically where we have things like formulas and the different kind of constraints that we can employ within the form. Also things like relevant condition, and so on and so forth. So to make the form display any kind of content, we would go to the body section of the form, and within the body section, you have different kinds of groups. So groups in the CHT context translate to pages. So we'll go into one of the pages and okay, so this one is more of the first section, so it doesn't have what we need for this demo. Let's take a look at the second group. So in the second group, we have the traditional input tags and then the labels. So the label of the input tag is typically where the string content of the question goes. So let's say, for example, something like, what is your name? And for our use case, we are looking at note fields. So these are one-sided kind of inputs which do not allow any data to be entered within the input field. So let's scroll a bit down because these other labels are fairly straightforward. But when we look at this highlighted part, we can see that this is where the table HTML was input to be displayed within the CHT. And take note of the character data element. So this is a feature that is within the XML standard where it instructs the XML processor not to interpret any kind of markup that is within those tags, not as part of the XML document. So if you have these character data tags, it means that anything within it will not be touched. So the table that is rendered here, it will not be modified in any way. But as we know, the XML document that we upload to the CHT, all these other elements, they are turned into various widgets by the Enquito layout render system. So if you put anything within character data tags, it will be rendered as is. So I'll shift over to a demo of how this looks like so that we can appreciate the end result. So this is part of that page that we just saw in the XML format. And at the end of the day, this is how the table will be rendered. So think of this as a jumping off point. You can do basically anything that is supported on our webpage. You can have it within a form and you can incorporate all kinds of functionality within the form itself. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this before we move on to the next section? Okay, back to you, Buso.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Elijah? Okay. If not, we can move on to you, Michael.
Awesome. Thanks, Marina Chana. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Cohn. I'm a product manager here at Medic, and I wanted to share a couple updates with you on some of the work that we've been doing to support supervisors better. Next slide, please. Awesome. So we've kind of shared some updates on what we've been doing to help supervisors support CHWs better these last couple roundup calls. And today I'm going to give you a live demo of this, but to kind of contextualize this first, I just wanted to share a couple slides here. So the supervisors typically have CHW areas underneath them, and they are often associated to like a community health unit or something like that. So what you see right here in the little hierarchy thing on the left is a pretty typical diagram of what the hierarchies look like. You have one supervisor associated to one CHU, and they have several CHW areas underneath them. Next slide, please. What we have been working on and what will be available very soon is the ability to have a supervisor who, where you can assign multiple CHUs to the same supervisor so that they can supervise CHWs in multiple CHUs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and give you a little demo of what that looks like. Cool. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So on the left here, I am logged in as an administrator, and I just kind of wanted to show you real quick what this looks like, or how I have the data set up here. So we have a sub-county here that has multiple CHUs in it. So we have Katanga and Mbwani CHU. And then we also have Masinga, which has the Wambu CHU in it. So what I'm going to show you is a supervisor that is logged in, a supervisor that just has one CHU, so the Wambu CHU, and then I'm going to also show you a supervisor that is associated to multiple CHUs. But let's go ahead and set up that supervisor first, the one that has multiple CHUs. So one of the things that you will need to do first here is set up the roles. So can have multiple. So there's a new permission called can have multiple places. And for supervisors that need to manage multiple areas, they need to have this permission. So in this demo, we just have the supervisor role. We've granted that role this permission. So anybody with the supervisor role will be able to have multiple places associated to them. Now let's go and set up some users, or a user. I'm just going to set up the one for the one that has multiple places assigned to them. So we'll just call this roundup. And to show you what some of the error messages you might see, I'm actually just going to select the CHU first and that role first. So let's go ahead and put in Katanga CHU and Kalama sub-county and supervisor. Don't need to worry about this just yet. Okay, so right now I've selected multiple places here and this role, which does not have the permission that we need. So we can see we get an error message that says this person with selected role cannot have multiple places. Cool, that's what I expected. If I associate or if I assign this role here, the supervisor role, now I see that I have two places associated. Go ahead and hit the add user, and it gives me an error message that says the selected places must be at the same hierarchy level. So that's another important thing to understand here, is that what we're supporting is the multiple places that are associated to this user must be at the same hierarchy level. So let's just go and add Wani in here. So there we go. So these are both at the CHU level. I've got this role. My user is just called Roundup. I've associated it to a contact that is associated to one of these CHUs. Let me just remember, okay, Roundup, because I'm going to log in as that person. There we go. So now I've got that user set up, and I'm going to basically show you the difference and how these look. So I'm going to sign in as Roundup, the one that we just set up. And I have another user that I already set up that is just associated to that, to one CHU. So I'm just going to start on the people page. and go through the the differences. So again, the supervisor that I'm logged in on that has multiple CHUs is the screen on the right. And this is a supervisor that just has one CHU associated. So right off the bat, you can see the difference here is the one that just has one facility, one CHU, you can see all the child places underneath it. Whereas if I have multiple CHUs assigned to me, I just see the CHUs in this list here. But to get to the CHW areas, I can just drill down here. So if I tap on Katanga CHU, I will see the list of the CHW areas here. So that's basically how they will navigate down to get to the actual CHW areas there. So that's on the people page. If we look at the reports page, there's not much difference here. The main thing, so again, this is a user the supervisor that has multiple CHUs. We've added a level of breadcrumbs here. So the lineage that you see here, we've added a level so it's easy to know which CHU these are associated to. Whereas if you're just associated to one CHU, you don't see that because they're all the same CHU. You can also filter based on the different CHUs here to narrow those down. If we look at tasks, it's basically the same. We have in the lineage here, we've added one level. So this one you can see it as Katanga and Mwani, whereas this one does not. Same thing on the messages page. We have the additional level of lineage shown here. And finally, on the performance or targets tab page, for supervisors that have multiple facilities or CHUs assigned to them, for this version, we have disabled the target aggregates. It's something that we will add in a future iteration. But for right now, the supervisors that have multiple facilities will not see aggregate targets. They'll only see their personal targets. But for supervisors that only have one facility associated to them, they will have they'll still be able to see the targets and the target aggregates. So that's an overview of what this change looks like. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. There's also a forum post, which I'll share here in a second. This feature, the development is basically done, and we expect it to be available in a release in the next week or so. And we'll definitely announce that on the forum and the usual channels. Over. Any questions?
Thank you, Michael. Before we take any questions for you, maybe we can have Elijah speak a little bit about the question that has been asked in the chat and the specific use case that's spoken about.
Yes, Abigail had asked whether the numbers that are shown within the table are dynamic, because as we know, the X form is sort of static in nature. So it might make it seem like the numbers are also static. So sharing a bit more background on the use case that we were working with is we wanted to pay CHWs for the performance that they managed to achieve for any particular month. And the way we were doing that is pulling data from targets and then having an external service processing that data and then generating those tables and then uploading the tables within the forms. At the end of the day, the supervisors would be able to see the tables, and then they can verify that the CHWs have achieved the performance that is shown there.
Right. Thanks, Elijah. I know we have gone back and forth, But for Michael, for anyone who has questions, for Michael or Elijah, you can feel free to put them down. But I know for this specific multiple users for supervisors, I know the Guild Digital team was very interested in that. And I can see some of them here. So maybe if any one of you, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but if any one of you wants to speak a little bit or ask any question.
Hi, this is Brian. I could just chip in a bit. Uh, I hope you can all hear me. This is a very exciting feature, I think, to have, in part because in our unique scenario, we have supervisors that are also operating across different program areas. And so you have a scenario where you have different zones and clusters, but the partners, the health implementing partners, are also assigned to one or more areas, geographical areas. And so that's a very interesting dynamic where we are assigning multiple CHUs to a supervisor, but we're also assigning multiple areas. But we're also pairing that particular supervisor with oversight in multiple program areas. So some people would be child health only, and other people would be both child health and maternal health, or the combination of child health and WASH. And that becomes a very interesting version. So I think for me, it's exciting to see the geographic area, and I'm looking forward to see how we could play with that to also factor in multiple program areas as per the partner needs. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Michael, any other use cases? I know for Brian, he's spoken a little bit about his use case, and I know it was when people would move around a lot, but maybe you'd want to speak about any other use cases where you've seen this, where you foresee this being used a lot.
Well, this is entirely based on the hierarchy that's set up in the CHT. So it basically represents, or it basically supports what data is available on the device based on that hierarchy. So yeah, it is 100% tied to what the hierarchy, the way the hierarchy is set up in like the contact types and all that in the app. And not really based on use cases or in the sense of like health-based use cases like ANC or PNC or whatever. It's entirely based on the geographical hierarchy and what is actually replicated to the devices for these users. And I saw there was a question about offline supervisor roles versus online supervisors. And the way the CHT works today, online users see all data. There's no way to restrict what data is on the actual device. So this feature does not really interact, or it does not do anything for online users at all. It's really only relevant to offline users. And what it does is, instead of them only being able to see sort of like one branch of the hierarchy, now they can be assigned multiple branches of the hierarchy. So again, yeah, it doesn't really do anything for online supervisors.
Yeah, and we also have a question from Eric. Do you want to ask your question?
Hi, yeah, this is a very interesting feature. Thank you. I was just asking if it can be applied across the different parent regions. So, for instance, I can say maybe for Kenya, somebody being just in charge of, let's say, two particular counties. So, let's say County 1, County 2. Then within those counties, maybe just two particular sub counties. I don't know if that has come across clearly.
I think so, yeah. So what I think you'd be able to do, kind of like we have with the CHUs here. For example, if that person was had some in Kalama and some in Masinga, they're basically the different CHUs. So you would be able to assign across multiple sub-counties as well. So you could have a user that is associated to Wambu, Katanga, and Mbwani. It doesn't really matter what their parent hierarchy, sorry, their parents are per se. What matters is that they are all at the same level. Does that make sense? So like in the example I have here, I had two separate users. I had one that was associated to the Wambu CHU, but its parent was Masinga, like we have in the slide here. And I had another user that was associated to Katanga and Mbwani, whose parent was Kalama. Kalama and Masinga are at the same hierarchy level. Wambu, Katanga, and Mbwani are at the same hierarchy level, but with different parents. You can have a user that is associated to all of those different CHUs, even if they have different parents, as long as they are at the same level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
Cool.
Right, exciting stuff going on. Any other question for Michael? I know you've answered Abigail's question. Any other question? All right, I think we can move on to the next slide, and I'll also call Leah to present.
Thanks, Maria Chana. My name is Leah Ngari, a UX researcher at Medic. So we are rolling out the new CHT app navigation, and we have been communicating these changes on different platforms. So we wanted to gauge the current awareness status through a brief survey. So I'm going to ask Maria Chana to launch the brief survey, after which we'll continue with the slides.
So I will end the poll. So as per the results, I think most of our community members have heard about the upcoming navigation changes. 19 out of 28 who responded, which is 68%. Then 9 have never heard about that, which is 32%. And then we have 64% who are interested in usability testing. So we hope we'll be able to reach out to you so that we can do that. All right, thanks. Back to you, Leah.
Thanks, Anthony, and thanks everyone for participating. So, like I have mentioned, over the past year, we've been making some incremental UI updates to the CHT so that it can be more scalable, more intuitive, mobile fast, and also it can we can also align it closely with material design. So our final step in this planned incremental update is to make some updates to the navigation. So what we have here on this slide is the old navigation, which I'm sure all of us have sure and have seen it and we are aware of it. Next slide, Boso. So in this slide here, we have the proposed or the new designs. And as you can see here, we have some few changes. So one, we for each of the tabs, we'll have the tab name appear at the top. And then the other tabs will appear at the bottom. And the current tab will be highlighted in white, as we can see here. And then something else to that has changed is that we can see the hamburger menu has moved from the right hand side to the left hand side. And when we click on it, it opens into a side drawer and we have more information there. So in the next slide, sorry, Boso. So we have started testing these designs with some of the CHWs, and we have some preliminary observations that we have made. So we have observed that majority of the participants could not recognize the changes in the navigation. We had by just at the first glance. So the facilitator had to probe further so that they could identify the changes. Then another thing we observed or heard is that so during that usability testing that we conducted, we gave them some tasks based on the new app design, based on the design that I've just shown you there. And most of the CHWs said that the tasks were easy to do. And although some of them were a bit confused with the first attempt, but when they got the gist of how the things were working, they termed it as easy to use. And like Anthony has also mentioned, we are seeking for more partners to help us get these new designs in front of the CHWs so that we can identify areas that are easy to use, aspects that are confusing, and also areas that might need some additional training just to support a more seamless transition. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us, but we're also going to reach out to those who have indicated their interest in the survey that you have just conducted. That's all from my end. Back to you, Maria Chana.
Thank you, Leah. Any questions for Leah? All right. If not, we can move to the allies update, and Sugat will be taking us through that.
Hey everyone, I'm Sugat Bhattacharya, and I'm a software developer at Medic in the Allies Focus Working Group. And today I'm going to be presenting about the updates on CHT Android. So in this update, we've implemented support for Android deep links in version 12+, which in turn re-enables token login in the application. So what does deep links mean? Android deep links is a feature which allows you to link your domain with the application, such that link from the application, if clicked, then it opens the link in the application itself and not in any browser. So now coming to token login. Token login is an authentication mechanism in which the users receive a one-time login link, and they can through any medium, SMS in our case, and the users can open the link to authenticate themselves. So next slide, please. So what does token login benefit over password? The first being security. So by removing the dependency on password, this method mitigates the issues such as weak or compromised password and phishing attacks and brute force attacks as well. And since there is no password involved anymore, it reduces the password management overhead that was involved in the password based authentication mechanism. So we no longer need to implement password policies as such. And the third benefit that it provides is mobile accessibility. So for anyone who is using our application or any other application on mobile devices, some might find it difficult to enter the passwords, which sometimes can be very long and can be complex and challenging. So this removes the overall necessity to enter passwords as a whole. You can just click a link and then you're logged in. So correlated to that, it provides a better user experience as well. So users don't need to remember their complex password or forfeit the password from where they are storing it. It makes the login experience much more streamlined and convenient. Next slide, please. So before the implementation of Android deep links in Android 12 plus, this is what it used to look like. Suppose if someone received the token link, which looks like in the screenshot on the left side, if someone clicks it, it redirects the users into the browser and logs them in. Whereas now, after the implementation of the Android deep links in CHT Android, when clicking the link, the users are redirected right into the CHT Android application itself, given that the domain has been verified and the application has been linked with the domain. So let's see what the feature looks like with a quick demo. Let me share my screen. Hope the screen is visible.
Yes.
So what you're seeing right now is the Android device in which the CHT application is installed. The CHT application, however, is an old one in which the deep links issue does not, deep links feature has not been implemented yet. So let's see how it looks like when you click a login link. So I've saved a few token links here. We'll be opening one of them. So if I open one of them to log myself in, it opens in the browser and logs me in. And I can do whatever I want from here, like what I would do if I use password-based authentication. So let's check the same thing out in a different device in which the CHT Android application is installed, but it contains the deep links feature as well. So if I do the same, but in which deep links feature has been implemented, it takes me to the CHT application and it starts fetching the relevant data and logs me in. So now I can use the application normally. So this is basically the whole feature itself. Do you have any questions regarding this?
Maybe as we wait for questions, Sugat, is it that someone can use the login link once only, or you can use it multiple times?
It's a one-time login link and can only be used once. It cannot be used more than once, and the login link has a default expiry date of 1 day, if I'm not wrong, in CHT.
All right. Thanks. Any questions for Sugat? All right. If not, maybe we can go back to the slides. And as we're waiting for the slides to come up, the next presenter is Ben. So I welcome you to go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Maria Chana. Hi, everyone. Yeah, that is my cue. So my name is Ben. I'm a software developer at Medic, working with the Care Team's Focus Working Group. And in my brief presentation, I'm going to highlight some of the amazing features that have been released in our previous releases. So next slide, please. So first of all, I want to highlight that we released version 4.7.0 on May 7th, and that version came with some amazing additions and features. The first being that we added the missing Spanish, Swahili, and French translations just to make CHT more inclusive to other language aside from English. And an additional step that we have taken going forward is to have a check that ensures when you add an English description that you must add the Spanish, Swahili, French, and Nepali translations as well. The second feature, which was very exciting for us, is that we had two amazing contributions from our external partners. The first being support for getting the difference between two dates in various time formats, which was added by our lovely partners, the Western Cape technical team, working with C# to implement the CHAMP program. The second one was added support to make countdown widgets required in the CHT forms, which was added by our lovely partners at Living Goods. So those are the two brief highlights that we added, but that is not the exclusive list. Anthony has just posted on the chat the full release notes so that you can be able to view all the features that were added in 4.7.0. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to all the contribution from our external partners, and say that we are thrilled when partners make contributions, because open source is all about the community. So we welcome more contributions going forward. Thank you. Next slide, please. Now, unfortunately, immediately after the release of 4.7.0, a critical bug was discovered that prevented further upgrades from 4.7. So let's say you had come from 4.6, you went to 4.7, there was a bug that was preventing further upgrades. But luckily it was discovered early on and it was fixed, and 4.7.1 was released. So that now means if you are at 4.7, you can be able to upgrade to a more recent release. Also, it's important to mention that because of that critical bug, and we didn't want a situation where anyone is stuck in 4.7, the 4.7 release was removed from our release list. When you go to GitHub, you might not see that. So don't be wondering what happened to that missing one. But it is also worth mentioning that all the amazing features that are in 4.7 are available on 4.7.1. So feel free to upgrade to 4.7.1 without any worry. Next slide, please. And finally, our latest release was 4.8.0, which was released on May 23rd. One of the most interesting thing that was added there was significant performance improvement in the contact list page. So this is the people page. We are thrilled that has significant performance improvement, because of course it's one of the most visited pages by the CHWs when they're on the field providing care. The other thing that was included in the 4.8 release are 3 security patches that were discovered and fixed during routine penetration tests, and that those security vulnerabilities were discovered by Alex Anderson. As you can see on the right-hand side, he became the first person to join the Contributor Hall of Fame by being able to identify those security vulnerabilities and providing patches to fix them. So we welcome anyone who would like to become the second and the third and the fourth Contributor Hall of Fame to interact with CHT. If you come across any security vulnerability, let us know. Let us work together to patch that vulnerability, and let's add you to the Hall of Fame. And with that, I've covered the 3 updates of the latest releases. So I'll hand over back to Maria Chana.
Right. Thank you, Ben. So we are really hoping to see you in the Hall of Fame. For anyone who's here, maybe we'll even have the Walk of Fame soon. Who knows? So feel free to reach out in case you think you have something to help us update. All right. Any questions for Ben? All right. No questions. So I'm seeing a couple of new names here and new faces, and we're very excited to have new community members with us here. So I'd like them, I know maybe it's putting you on the spot, but I'd like them to just say something about themselves and we can welcome them to the community. So I'll ask Jason to unmute and maybe introduce themselves.
Cool. Hi, everybody. Jason Burke. I'm work with Western Cape Department of Health. Work with UNRWA, who was involved in one of the contributions that you mentioned earlier. So yeah, shout out again to UNRWA for that. I work with him. Over.
Thank you. All right. I'll also introduce Tim. I think he's here. I think I'd want them to introduce themselves. Tim Goge. Tim Goge. Right. Okay, if Tim is not here, maybe we can have final questions for any of the presenters. All right, no questions. So we are very happy to have had this call with you, and we hope to see you in the next roundup call, which will be on July 11th. So thank you for your participation and see you then.